Welcome to another episode of Badass Banking. And today I'm with Mary Wisniewski, who is a digital editor and journalist with Bankrate.com. And when I first met you, you were with American Banker. How are you?
Well, I'm going to say I'm okay.
Yeah,
considering all things, yeah.
Now, how are you adapting to California living? You're still in California, right?
I'm still in California. I'm in LA. It's just a bunch of fires, so I'm lucky to be not so close to them, but the smoke is still overwhelming in pockets of LA. So not ideal in this moment, but usually it's quite nice to be here. I had wanted to get away from New York City, and LA suits me pretty well.
So let's talk about your last 10 years. Any lessons? Any lessons learned in the last 10 years? I've known you now for 10 or 11 years since my Gizio days.
Yeah, I believe you must have been in that crew that came out to the American Banker.
Is that the New York trip?
Yeah, that was a New York trip.
I wasn't on that one. That was Pete, and it might have been one of our investors. Sean might have been there too. I don't really know, but it goes way back. So what have you learned about fintech in the last 10 years? First of all, can you believe it's been 10 years?
No, I can't believe it's 10 years because, you start and then it feels like, oh, everything's going so slowly. And now it's just like, boom, 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 boom. I can't even believe, that I've been in this career for a decade. That's wild. Yeah. And I remember like the early days, it felt smaller. I'm trying to remember the specifics of like what was happening. I think it's kind of perfect that Finovate is happening this week. Cause I think like right when I was starting, I think it might've been year 2 for Finovate, but it was just going. You were just starting to see interest from bankers, feel like possibilities for, technology projects, more of the consumer facing ones, because of course banks use technology and have for decades. So yeah, I'm dating it back to like early Finovate days. I was blogging for Bank Innovation to begin with. Banks were just starting to do innovation labs and that kind of thing. And now here we are in the present where, we can officially say some of these components are mainstream.
Yeah, it's about time, right? I mean, I got into banking in 85. We've been talking about this since 1985. We've talked about high tech, high touch, and finally, I think we're getting there.
Yeah. And wasn't that, am I getting this right? In the internet banking used to be called home banking?
Oh yeah, home banking. My father called it home banking right up to the bitter end. Yeah, home banking. I will do anything to avoid home banking. So are you noticing over the last 10 years any like trends with some of these fintechs, even the ones that have failed? Have you noticed any trends?
Well, there's always a trend, and then it sort of moves, and I feel like we kind of move back. And one of the bigger undercurrents, and it's something we heard about even 10 years ago, and certainly you would be privy to this, and that was just the notion of like automating more of your finances. It's always been the rhetoric as far as I can say from covering fintech, but now you're seeing much more evidence of it. I think when we probably even had these conversations way back when I remember the early days where it's like PFM in a tab, lost somewhere in online banking, nobody sort of knew what to do. And now we're in a phase where, I really credit Digit a lot to, automating savings in a more interesting way, and it caught on with a lot of consumers. And now you're seeing all sorts of examples of that. And even from mainstream banks now, you're seeing this notion applied. I think Huntington is the most recent one, working with Personetics to just sort of like make small savings happen for the customers who want it. Ally as well, and so you're starting to see, you would just look at a screen to see here's kind of what's happening, and now for consumers who are okay with automation, you're seeing it happen.
Yeah, and again, it's about time. I like the automation. I like the automation with savings. Obviously, bill payment, anything that takes the friction or the chore away, I'm a big fan of. I think that's the most important aspect or change that I've seen. Banking has become fundamentally easier for me. I can't speak for America, but I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. I'd like to see bankers and credit union people focus on advice more
Yes.
and leverage the analytics that they have at their hands. I mean, there's so much data, but very little information. I still get messages from my bank today that I should prepare for retirement. I'm actually retired, and they know it, and they've seen the money come and go in my account. So they're educated, but they're ignorant at the same time. It's a real challenge, and that's
Yeah.
I'm talking about a $20 billion bank too, not a little
I'm
bank.
not surprised. I'm not surprised because I can even think of like simpler text messages just alerting you to like low balance or something like this has improved, but before like those even hit at the wrong time because of just like the legacy technology causing those time gaps, making everything a little bit strange.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have a favorite fintech?
Do I have a favorite? No, I don't. And that's not me trying to dodge the question. I just have a favorite broad category. You know, I'm really drawn to, it's an upbeat, optimistic, super ego involved of like, hi, I'm redoing banking to help a wider range of people. Like that's like a beautiful sentiment, also requires huge ego.
Yeah.
But like I think it's a fascinating proposition because certainly like the banking model is still so very flawed. I think the way fees are charged for consumers, it's very confusing still even to this day, even with all the pressure that's happened over the years. So I don't know, I guess that's pointing me into sort of the challenger bank category of but sometimes it's just more rhetoric than like what are they actually doing that's so radical, but sometimes even just the marketing spin makes it a little bit better. But certainly you're seeing more accounts that aren't charging fees and they pair with a better mobile app, and then they do useful things like in the case of Chime, or I believe it was also Current, where they advance like stimulus money a couple days early, which helps a lot of people who are tight on cash flow often.
Yep. How about Marcus? They get a lot of coverage. I'm a Marcus fan. I think they're doing a lot
Yeah.
of really good. I mean, it's a bank that has been very successful, right? What they're doing. Goldman's really doing some neat stuff, in my opinion, with Marcus. Any thoughts on
Oh,
them?
yeah, you know what? They're winning over a lot of deposits, and I saw, I think it was on in CNBC today, but just how their next version of the app is out, and I think it pointed. I don't think it's stated, but Clarity Money was an acquisition it made a handful of years ago, or maybe even more. They're ones that have competed on rate, which is still like something that attracts certain demographic, and they're winning over lots of people.
I can't find any good rates anymore, to be honest with you. Not in the zero interest rate environment we're in right now. I
It's
got
low, but
I got lured
you
in. I got lured in by Capital One and Betterment with some really nice teaser rates, and now they're dismal.
dismal. I think especially Betterment, but I think Borrow is still offering a competitive rate, and I'm air quoting it because of course rates aren't that high right now. But HM Bradley is a startup too that's paying, I think, up to 3%, but there's like stipulations
I
there.
mean, my dad lived off of CDs back in the day.
Yeah, well, he's not alone. There's, I didn't realize how into CDs some people are until I
Oh
started
yeah.
with Bankrate, and I'm like, wow, this is a whole,
Oh,
this is a whole thing.
there's a sophisticated laddering system that you can deploy with CD, or you used to when there was a lot more market volatility with the rates, but there isn't today. So let's talk about your job for a minute. So I know some of the people that watch this weird show that I have, and it's kind of an experiment. It's a hobby, which is it's
The best.
bizarre. That's pretty
No, it's the
weird.
best sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I
Well,
guess.
I'm learning to roller skate, so that's my hobby.
I saw that somewhere. Yeah, weren't you riding a bull just a year ago, and now you're like roller, or was it a cow? I can't remember.
It was a mechanical pig
I mean, oh, that's
for one of my favorite blogs I've written. If I get a vote on my own work.
a mechanical pig. First of all, I'm mortified there actually is such a thing, but kudos to you for mastering that.
Thank you. I was proud just to be able to experience that.
So I've got some fintech startup people that are watching. A couple of them are my
Yeah.
friends, people I don't know are watching. I think they'd really like to know, from a journalist point of view, what makes for an interesting pitch. Everyone wants their product covered, right? Everyone thinks they've got the newest and the greatest. What makes for an interesting pitch from a journalist's point of view?
Well, so each journalist will have a different like what thing that they're looking for, and of course it depends on the pub. But I'll speak to like what I was looking, I'm editing more than writing these days, but
Yep.
I can speak to what intrigues me at American Banker. So that's, for the trade. But even there, I was always looking for, you're getting pitches about companies launching, that's something a business, maybe even consumer media would cover, just sort of depends. But like if you fit into a bigger trend or something counterintuitive is happening, that's sort of what appeals to me. I remember there's a story I did for American Banker, and it was about a startup that ended up failing, but they were doing an in-person marketing effort at the time. And that was interesting because, all the startups usually say like, we got to be digital only, but here they were, advocating for the in-person. So that's like something a little bit different. For Bankrate, I've been more of the feature reporter. So I've been looking for like, anything counterintuitive, but also like newer problems. So, I just celebrated the automated savings apps, but there's also a problem where people like accidentally overdraft in them. So that would be a story to cover because it's a newer technology and there's newer risks.
Yeah.
Also, and just kind of like what's going on in the like Venmo, people wanted to tip with Venmo, like the nails and the salon and that kind of thing. So I did kind of more of a feature about that. But, it depends if you're dealing with a straight news reporter, because certainly like back in American Banker, I remember, covering, like, I guess what would be considered the tech scandals or like the wars. So it'd be like My Tech versus USAA. I think there was a thing that was going on there. So, controversy, but also for a fintech startup taking off, it's interesting when they form, but it's also interesting if they can just weigh in on like broader trends or what they're really trying to do, because at least as it worked at American Banker, we're looking for analysis and bigger stories. And at Bankrate, I'm again on the feature side, so I'm looking for like a larger arc versus just like this company did X thing on X day.
Yep. Yeah. What I've noticed with some people, and people, I get pitches from angel investors and startups every once in a while, and I always ask them the question, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And they're pretty slow to answer that. It seems to me isn't that how you should lead? Like, here's the situation and here's how we're handling that situation. It's understanding the point of pain and solving that point of pain. That's the issue to me.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, and I'm with you. Like that, sometimes people are not that clear on answering that, and some of it's because you're like kind of adjusting your idea as you go along. Depends how early stage you are, but yeah, it's good to have a value proposition.
I think, yeah, no doubt. I think people get really close to it. Founders, co-founders, CMOs, they get so focused on it, they get blinders on.
And that's the other thing. Like sometimes these like updates are very interesting, but if it's a press release or even just like a casual email, sometimes it's like written in a way that seems like so dry that it doesn't have universal appeal. So you really need a reporter who knows that's going to be interesting. So if they're newer, they might not, but if they're more seasoned, they'll see in that. But that's just, if you're a fintech startup, and you got to remember that you're probably in the weeds more than the reporter. So just to like explain what's the broader implications.
And what's the best way to approach a reporter or journalist? Is it to get to know them and follow them on social and find an intelligent way to engage them? Or is it to cold call them? Is it to fax them? Or should startups, back in the day, that's what we did. We faxed people in the 80s. God forbid. Do you have a fax machine? I bet you don't. I don't.
No, and I never had. I couldn't even work the printer when I worked in an office. It's like, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't know. For me, so I've often had an open door policy because I just find that's how you find interesting things. For me, Twitter has worked well. I like when people approach me there. DM's open to it. I know a lot of reporters who are open to it. I think more general press release emails are kind of boring at this point, and don't really say what they need to say anyway. But I think it is good if you can engage with the journalist's work. That's great, because also you'll know what they're looking for. Everybody has a beat, so there's like someone who's going to be more appropriate to pitch than someone else. Best way would be like an editor can funnel it, but it doesn't always work that way. So I would say just stay engaged, especially social. LinkedIn is effective to to some extent, but I think Twitter is like, especially for tech, I feel like that's the way to go about it.
That's how you and I met. And I agree with you. I think Twitter's good. And I think from the startup's point of view, position yourself as a resource, because you're out there trying to make a living. Your publication needs to make money. It's got a niche typically, especially in the fintech space. Position yourself as a resource, and then the journalists will come to you ultimately. And, and
like,
from there you develop a relationship.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to like tweet provocative things. You know, I know that's like, you know, scary a lot, but like, that's how, you know, people will find interesting ideas and stories. You know, just have an opinion and let people know what it is.
Yeah. And Smithfield Foods is looking for a new corporate communications director. Now that you've mastered pig riding, that could be a thing for you. Right?
Dear Bankrate, I quit.
Well, listen, Mary, I know you're busy. I appreciate all your time. I'm going to post all your contact info down below. I won't give them the personal email because I know you don't read emails because, you know, you'd rather be engaged through Twitter. But I will put all your info there, plus your LinkedIn stuff. Any last thoughts? Anything new and exciting happening later in the week for you?
Oh, let's see. Oh yeah. Well, I'll be moving into Big Bear to hopefully have some better, that made it seem like I was moving officially. I know I will spend a few days from there. So changing location. What else is going on this week? I'm doing an Instagram live with a challenger bank on Thursday.
Okay. Who's that with? Is it Borrow?
That's with H.M. Bradley.
Oh, H.M. Bradley. Okay. Well, anyway, I do appreciate your time today. And I'll post all your info below. And
wonderful. Well, Brian, it was a delight. Thanks for having me here. It's great to see your face.
Yeah, enjoy Big Bear. That's a fun place. I went up there coming out of Palm Springs one year, and that's really neat. Now you got to be careful. That's up in the woods.
I know.
The woods burn.
I Why am I laughing? Yeah. I know.
Anyway, I appreciate your time. It's good seeing you.